I was always going into business. I had a plan to go into business. I've been following gyms on not YouTube, but Facebook. People following pages had no intent on going with gyms. I hate mowing.
Jim basically said, let's interview this man and to find out how he's been going in the first 2 months being a franchisee. So maybe do you want to talk about that email and what you said in it and about how you've been going so far?
So there was two separate occasions.
Yep.
So about 4 or 5 weeks in, I got an email from Jim asking how I was going. And guess what? I wasn't going well that day. So Jim heard about how well I wasn't doing. But that's from all different avenues, not just business, etc. But I think it just gave me someone to direct all of that energy at. Poor Jim caught the brunt of that. And then about 2 weeks later, I was actually listening to a podcast where Dan was getting interviewed on the Lawn Stars. And I thought, I was feeling positive, such a profitable week. It was scheduled so well. It was just a really, really good week. And I was listening to Dan. I could feel all that positive energy of his. I know I'm just going hard. I was going to knock off early on a Friday and things were just going smooth. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take the podcast off, write a little text message to Dan, apologize for probably saying some not so good things about him, about gyms, etc. to Jim, and just get a hold of him and say, actually, thank you, basically. And then he called me straight away. He's like, mate, that's okay. That's what we're here for, etc. He's obviously got broad shoulders. It's probably once a week at least that I speak to him, or even Don. Sometimes I speak to Don 2 or 3 times a week, which is...
That's Don Handibo, yeah? Don Handibo.
Don Handibo. I was just on the phone to him about half an hour ago with an issue and he solved it. Even last week, I was speaking to Don at 9:30 at night or something. And that was about selecting ride-ons, etc. What am I going to do? And he's messaged me till 10:30 at night or something. So yeah. Anyway, I just had to reach out and apologise and say, nah, all good, Dan. But he's, like I said, he's got broad shoulders. He's done all this before. He knows what I'm going through. And it's pretty good.
No, well, this is great to talk to someone like yourself, Mitch, because obviously, when you do podcasts, people go, you're only picking the best franchisees in regards to only putting stuff that's good. So it's great to hear that you've had the realities of business almost in a way. It's not all smooth sailing, as we know. There's ups and downs, and I know that from talking to a lot of franchisees as well. And thank you for sharing that, and that's really honest to hear. So I want to talk about then a little bit, take you a bit back to your journey. What were you doing prior to Jim's Mowing before coming into the franchise?
Yeah, so before going to gyms, I was working probably the closest amount of work that I was doing was mining and earthworks. So that was for probably about a 4-year period prior to gyms. I'm 33 now. So prior to that, in my mid-20s to late 20s, was farming, agricultural.
Okay.
Prior to that, we're talking retail management, hospitality management. So sort of 3 different fields.
And what prompted the change for you then?
I was always going into business. So I had a plan to go into business. I've been following gyms on, I think, not YouTube, but Facebook. People following pages had no intent on going with gyms. I hate mowing. I had no intent. I was actually looking at another franchise model and I wanted to get into diggers and excavators, bobcats, all that real tight access earth moving equipment. I'll tell you what, I could use that now as well. That's what I wanted to go in with. And I'd organised to have a meeting with these people. I had money, I was ready to move. I'm ready to go into a business. And the discovery call that I had with them, I had it booked at 10 o'clock in the morning or something. And it got to about 10:30. And I'm sitting there nervous as all whatever, pretty similar to get on this call actually. And waiting. And I'm sitting there for half an hour waiting for these guys to get contact with me. And they didn't call. So I called the guy who was meant to have this Zoom meeting with me. And he said, oh, sorry, I forgot about you. And then he proceeded to speak about how to get into the franchise stuff. And it was which is not gyms, it's a percentage. So he was going to take a percentage of the profit. And I had to buy all of the equipment through him. I couldn't buy or through their business. I couldn't buy it. And they maybe signed an agreement to say they wouldn't talk about it, but I hadn't said a brand name, so whatever. And I had to buy it all through them and it was a percentage. So for me to actually get to profitable, I was I'm going to need 6 or 7 $40,000 machines. But then every time I buy a machine, they're going to, and the cost of it was more than gyms. So I got off that phone call and I had off that Zoom and I had a missed call from someone and it was Dan Cahill. So I forgot about it. I wanted to know a little bit more about franchising. I thought, I'm just going to message this gyms group or whatever and just have a conversation with them to find out and sort of pick their brain and then go back to the company, like the work that I wanted to do. And so I called him back and it was Dan. And if anyone knows Dan, he's a bloody good salesman. So within about 45 minutes, he'd sold me a Jim's Mowing. I've got cyanitis, a deviated septum. I was getting x-rays on my face. I hated mowing. Every time I mowed my backyard, I was just all clogged up. And actually, after the training, I've had that fixed. So they put me on some medication and stuff like that. And sinus it's not affecting me at all. But yeah, that's sort of how I got into the franchise. And after the training as well, I didn't want to do mowing. But once I sat through the training, all that agricultural stuff, that came out. And I was like, hang on, I've got a passion for this. And then I got back to when I was in hospitality and retail. Hang on, I can do this. I think I'm going to enjoy this. And I had, it's crazy. When I go and talk to customers, I was just at a customer's place quoting some hedges and I noticed their citrus tree and she's pruned it really, really well. And I pruned over 20,000 citrus trees. So I know this. And I was like, oh, you've done this well, this well, this well. And she said, I don't know what I was doing. I said, this is why you've done it. And that's why it's good.
No, that's great. I was going to say to you, because people don't realize sometimes they might think Jim's Mowing and that's just mowing, but it's just a vehicle in. They've got all this unserviced work. You can take cross-divisional leads. If you ever want to do the digger stuff, you can take cross-divisional leads if they're available. There's so many things. It's just, doesn't matter if you're coming as cleaning, dog wash, whatever. You can do a lot of things outside of that. It's just the entry point to get in. So
I was cleaning windows this morning.
Oh, really? Okay. There you go. Because I know a few franchisees in cleaning, for example. There's a guy called Phil who's doing this sales thing this weekend, but he has a cleaning franchise, but he's pretty much the point for the household. So if they need a skip in, he's organising. If they need trees done, he's organising it and doing his clipping stuff. So there's just so many things you can do with gyms. So what did Dan say in the 45 minutes that got you to change your mind?
So he started talking, I think the initial thing that's what he said was, what do you know about franchises? And I was a supervisor or a shift leader and went into a little bit of the store management side of an Eagle Boys pizzeria when I was younger. And I did all of that in about 2.5 years. So I saw the store open and then I saw it get to the point where Tom Potter ran his franchise company into the ground, basically. I wasn't working with Tom Potter, but he was the head of, he's the one that created Eagle Boys, essentially. I think he's got a book out there about franchising and how hard it can be. But yeah, that was what I knew about it. But then we basically spoke about marketing and customer service and that type of thing. I don't think we touched on mowing. So, because I was ready to move on business at the time. I wasn't quite sure what I was ready to move on. But we spoke about, the business side, the customer service side, and how things would work for me.
Thank you for listening to the episode of the More Than Just Mowing podcast by Jim's Mowing. If you do need help with your local gardening expert, please give us a call on 131 546 for Australia, 0800 454 654 for New Zealand, or head to jimsmowing.com.au or jimsmowing.co.nz. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to leave us a review as well, wherever you consume your podcast. We appreciate your support. And until next episode, we hope you have a great week.